But the fun stuff is why we're all here. This is the real tea of, that's insane, because I could never, I like literally could never. Internally, it is like, in terms of representing real horses and real riders. So if you're an equestrian like me, every time we ever watch a TV show that has horses in it, we are hyper critical of everything they do and say, because sometimes it's realistic and sometimes it is not.
That smells like bullshit.
That there are lots and lots of shows, and this video was inspired by all these people who were going and making really funny shorts about Heartland, where the roundup scene, where basically it's like running around her and she's just screaming, and so a bunch of people made really funny mocking videos of that scene. Now, I have not watched Heartland. It is like 17 seasons and I don't have that much time. However, I did just recently rewatch Wildfire, and that is a show about horses. It's about horse racing, but potato. This video, I am actually going to break down the 5 best and worst things that Wildfire did in their show that is good horse training versus bad horse training, or realistic versus unrealistic, things we can learn versus things we should never ever recreate in real life. All right, so we're going to start with the good, and then we're going to move on to the bad, because the bad's really funny. So the first one is the scene where Matt is given this horse by his grandfather, and the only way that he gets his inheritance is if he's able to tame and train this horse. Now, I have been training horses for 20 years, but I've been breaking horses, and I know PETA hates that term, but starting horses under saddle. When a horse is first born, they are not born out of the womb automatically ready to go, aye, aye, captain. In fact, the last thing that they naturally want to do is listen to you, the human, tell them how to live their life. So when it comes to breaking horses, it's not because we're out there breaking their bones. It does have to do with the fact, though, that you're breaking a pattern of behavior where they are then looking to you as being their new herd leader. So it is breaking. It's not breaking in the sense of bad breaking. It is breaking, though. The first good scene that I loved this scene. It was Pablo coming up to Matt. He's trying to train this horse. The horse is basically untrainable by lots of standards. We'll watch the scene together, but he throws his hands up and just is like, I don't know what you want from me, which is really funny. I've been there, done that on that one. And Pablo comes up, and eventually he's giggling and the horse comes up behind him. And what's funny about this scene is he says, to paraphrase, that a good horse trainer is a horse yeller. So let's watch the scene, and then we'll come back with some thoughts.
Taz, come here. Taz, come here. Quit. Okay, easy. Come on. Easy, Taz. Come on, easy. You're nothing but a damn anchor, you know that? Fine. What? What just happened?
You told him who's boss and he listened.
What did I do?
You just figured out that sometimes the best horse whisperer is a horse yeller. Takes most trainers a lifetime to figure that one out.
So what's even funnier about this scene is that it's not actually the yelling that comes across to a horse. Because I know this is going to shock most of you, but horses don't speak English. They don't. They speak vibes. And so why yelling works is that as a horse trainer, if you get to the point where you are pulling out your hair at wit's end, sometimes you end up just yelling. But in a horse's mind, that is the equivalent of you becoming herd leader. You know, a herd is a totem pole of subordination. So if they realize that you're more powerful from, you know, obviously it's from volume, but it's really a vibe. If you're more powerful than them, then they will submit and they will join your herd. So I loved this scene. I thought it was really funny and also genius in the sense of this is 100% true. Now, I'm not suggesting you go and just yell at your horse for no reason. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is if you have a horse that's misbehaving, then if you're coming at your horse from a place of, it'd be kind of nice if you could listen at your earliest convenience, then your horse is not going to listen. If you come at your horse being like, it's my way or the highway, there's no other option, then your horse will submit. But you have to have the vibe of it's my way or the highway. And if you're faking that, your horse is going to know and they're not going to listen. The second one is right at the beginning of the show. There is a scene where this cop is riding Wildfire and getting really bad results. And then Chris pulls up with Pablo and hops out, and the cop gets off the horse and is like, this horse is useless. Nobody can do this. And she's like, well, watch me. And then gets on and does what he was trying to do, but does it easily, right? This goes back to a video I've already made, which was that horse shopping is kind of like dating. And what I find really interesting is everybody thinks that they can ride every single horse. Now, when it comes to finding horse and rider combinations that work, it is important that you don't have personalities that completely clash. Because if you have a scared rider on a scared horse, that is a recipe for disaster. But if you have a scared rider on a horse that knows what they're doing, then that horse isn't going to feed into the fear they feel from the rider. And so this version of, what happened in Wildfire it's a great example of, if you have a personality that's clashing with a horse, that could actually be the reason you're not successful riding that horse. And it really is like dating, in the sense that not all people are meant to be together, and not all horses and riders are meant to be, working together. So let's watch this scene and then a few closing thoughts.
Wildfire.
It's not hurting Wildfire. He's training him badly.
Damn horse has no confidence.
Confidence.
Damn.
Now, I want to add one more thought to this scene before we get to the third good thing that Wildfire did. Now, if you're having issues with your horse, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad horse and rider combination. When you see that somebody is unable to get results, then that's when this applies. If you're just having struggles where your horse is kind of like, I don't know if I want to listen to you, or I don't feel like it, then that's not why. That's not a mismatch of horse and rider. That's you not being assertive enough, or that's the horse just not listening. But when it comes to you're watching somebody ride a horse and there's a visceral bad reaction, then there's a very real possibility that that's just a bad match, and somebody else could get on and get a good result asking for the exact same thing. So the third one is Flame's group mentality. And this is where this is the best depiction I've ever seen in a TV show of horses herd mentality. So there's a scene earlier in the season where all these horses were burning in a barn. And so it was just they all trauma bonded over surviving this crazy fire. And then they're trying to train him to become a racehorse. And what's happening though is the horse is like, I don't want to be a racehorse. I don't want to go out there by myself. And so what they ended up doing was they were easing him into it, where they would start him galloping with his friends. And then he would then, because he's a racehorse at heart, go faster than the herd. But it was by, some training wheels that he was taught how to run a race, right, with his herd mentality friends. Now, this reminds me of like when I first started training horses, there's something that I learned really early that I found really fascinating. And so the first horse I ever taught how to lunge and how to ride, how to do all this stuff. So I taught him how to lunge, and then we went to a show. He was 2 years old, and we were doing an in-hand, presentation type show for, he getting graded on conformation and all this stuff. It was for practice, but whatever. We were at this show, and there was another horse lunging, and he sees this other horse lunging, and he starts having this like crazy bad reaction to seeing this other horse lunge. And I was like, you know what he's doing because you know what lunging is. But he was like really upset about the fact that other horses lunge. And I was like, I was like, what? Like, because you work, no one else is allowed to work? Just made me realize that horses herd mentality is deep-seated in their psyche, meaning that the horse wasn't upset that the other horse was lunging. They were like, we're running. Look, that horse is running. We all need to run. Of course, it's lunging. It's running in a circle. But for horses, they don't actually care, nor do they, does that ever cross their mind. They just like, he's running. Why am I not running? And so what was really funny is this scene was the perfect portrayal to help with the herd mentality of like kind of breaking that cycle, but also just a perfect depiction of what horses naturally feel when it comes to being a herd animal versus having to do things by themselves. They have to learn how to be independent. And this was a perfect scene of them learning how to become independent and having the training wheels on, if you will.
Y'all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? And do you believe you can do anything? But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
So I love that scene. And that was the third thing that Wildfire did really well when it comes to actually portraying what real horse training is like. Okay. So the fourth one, I'm going to try really hard not to go on a soapbox rant for this one. Long story short, without getting into the show and the nitty gritty of all the different characters and whatnot, there is a scene though, where they are doing dressage with Wildfire, and it's during his rehab of one of his many injuries he's had throughout the show. Now, originally, Chris, the main character, gets really upset by this because she wasn't asked, right? So they, come to an agreement of the fact that it's really good for him learning body movement. When it comes to dressage, the whole point of dressage as work in general is that your horse is learning how to manipulate their body through bending and utilizing their body better. And obviously there's bad sides to every type of riding, and you can't force a horse to learn how to use their body better. But the purpose of dressage is actually having control over all the body parts to move and, manipulate their body in different ways. So I've always said this, that all different types of horses and riders should cross-train, meaning dressage riders should jump. Does that mean you have to jump 4-foot fences? No. But should you jump your horses? Yes. And same with race horses. Should race horses do flat work? You don't have to do pure dressage, but you can do flat work, and learning how to do flat work. And for the record, when you're learning how to do a leg yield, which means the horse is going sideways and crossing their legs over their body, you can only get better at using your legs, especially if you're going to do something like racing, where you're basically going as fast as you can with your legs. Learning how to cross over your legs is a vital skill for not being clumsy or, being able to use your legs to the best of your ability when you're trying to do a flying lead change at Mach speed. So when it comes to this scene, obviously it was used as a drama point in the show to make two characters fight. But I will say, from a horse trainer's perspective, I think that cross training is one of the best ways to help horses improve, meaning that pure dressage horses jumping, them learning how to leave the ground and using and being able to use their body in that way. Jumping is dressage with stuff in the way. So it is something that is, hard for them, but also it's something they're naturally good at. Same with pure show jumpers. You guys should do dressage because there's things that you're going to learn in dressage riding that's going to help you get better at those turns. For instance, Grand Prix show jumpers, they jump stuff and they turn in the air and they turn on the way down. If you're actually teaching your horse how to do dressage, then they're going to be better at bending their ribs so that they can actually make those turns even sharper. So all I'm saying is that cross training is one of the best ways to level up your horse, no matter what type of riding you do. So that was the fourth best thing that Wildfire did when it came to representing actually great riding and great best practices when it comes to riding and training horses.
You look good. There you go, he's looking better already.
What are you doing on Wildfire?
I can't believe Matt. Jillian doesn't know a thing about racehorses. How can Matt just...
She didn't.
Well, then what was she doing making Wildfire prance around like some kind of show pony?
Because I asked her to ride him. Dressage for a racehorse, maybe it's out there, but thought it was a good idea. And hey, it's worth a shot. If it improve his balance, if nothing else. Just because you aren't open to it doesn't mean it won't work.
So this last one is actually kind of funny. So there's a scene so Wildfire breaks a bone and then he has to have some risky surgery and then he's recovering and they put him in this round pen, and this is when the main character is at odds with the main family and blah, 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 blah. Obviously this is a TV show. It's about drama, right? But there's this scene where Wildfire sees the main character and he just had surgery, but he jumps out over the corral and runs to the main character. Now, I found this scene to be so funny because I had a horse one time that had an abscess, and it was really funny because so when horses have abscesses, they're in a lot of pain. It's kind of like having the worst pimple ever, but on your foot. And so it was really funny because he was on stall rest because he had an abscess. And so all you can really do is soak the foot and wait for the abscess to pop. And then they immediately feel better and all is well. So it was really funny because I had just put him back in his stall after soaking his foot, but he kind of, I guess, went like, what, we're not going to work? And at that exact moment, the guy was mucking his stall. So the door was open and he had the wheelbarrow in front of his stall, and I had put him away and then I was walking away, but the door was open and he was leaning out over the wheelbarrow and looking at me leaving, and he jumped out. He jumped over the wheelbarrow, which of course he was jumping into a barn aisle. So there was a wall here. So he had to jump and turn. And then he limped over to me because he obviously had the abscess and limped over to me we're not going to work, hello, we didn't do anything. And it was by far one of the funny. I mean, obviously I was sitting there bro, you're limping, what, I'm trying to do you a favor and you're hello, I haven't done any work today. So it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But when I watched this scene in the show, I was obviously that's not the best. Horses will not know that that's not the best thing that they should be doing in terms of recovery. But 100%, I have actually had that happen before. And obviously this is not me giving any kind of advice. When horses do stupid stuff, horses are going to do stupid stuff. So there's really nothing you can do to stop them from doing the stupid stuff. But I will say, when I saw that scene. Some people would call it unrealistic, but I've actually had that happen before. So that's the funniest thing. Like that, this one's a good the reason I put it on the good list is not because it's a good thing, but it's because I've actually had this happen before, and I found the scene very funny because it reminded me of, my horse's name was Okie Dokie at the time. It reminded me of when Okie Dokie was like, he like limped over to me, and I was just like, oh my God, can you go back to your stall? Like, and everybody laughed. It was obviously he wasn't going to go anywhere fast anyway. He couldn't walk, let alone do anything else. But it was very funny, and also a great representation of that horse rider connection, because when you have a powerful connection with a horse, they really will, do that kind of stuff. And it's actually quite heartwarming when you realize that you have that type of connection with a horse. All right, so now we're on to the bad list, though. So this is the fun part, right? Because when it comes to all the good stuff, like there's a couple of things where we could actually learn some good things. There's some things that I pointed out where it's like, this could actually help you level up your riding, but the fun stuff is why we're all here. This is the real tea of what Wildfire did, where I was looking at it like with my eyebrows so far up that I got a new wrinkle, because I was like, that not only would that never happen, but like that's not even kind of close to realistic. So here is the first one when it comes to Wildfire and the worst of the worst of the worst. It's pretty simple, and it's all over the show. I can't even point to one example, but it is riders not wearing helmets. I personally, when I was in high school, there was a kid that I went to school with whose mom died because she fell off a horse and hit her head on pavement. And it's so simple because you're falling from a high distance, and how you fall and hit your head is not under your control, right? When you're falling off a horse, so many things have already gone wrong, and you're at the mercy of gravity at that point. So by far the dumbest thing that was presented throughout this show, and I get it, they're all actors and they don't want to mess up their hair, but if you're a person who rides horses, never, ever, ever ride without a helmet. And frankly, I train horses, so I'm usually on horses that aren't necessarily the safest of animals, and I have fallen and hit my head. So this is not about a riding ability thing. This is not even about like a level of experience thing. This is just stupid, simple rule. Protect your brain. Use a brain bucket, as you will. So,
Bruh.
Always wear a helmet. It's so silly not to. So stupid, because it's such a higher risk than just wearing one and messing up your hair. You can always take a shower, I promise. The second one is that I found really funny, and I was like internally gagging when I saw this, was there's a scene where one of the rich kids, it's a drama show. So one of the rich kids though is practicing show jumping, and she's practicing it in like full show clothes. And this one I'm actually going to show like a side-by-side of a video of her show jumping and a video of what I show jump in. Like when I practice my show jumping, I am literally wearing like sweatshirts and t-shirts, and like one time I was even wearing a tank top. Like I am not the kind of person that enjoys wearing my show clothes. In fact, I feel a bit smothered by them, but What's really funny about the second bad thing is that it's portrayed in the show that that's what we wear to the barn every single day. Let's just say that would be a very expensive, like on top of how expensive riding horses already is, if you were literally getting your show clothes like barn dirty every single day and you had to keep replacing your show clothes like that, like especially your show coat. Oh my God, like nobody would be able to afford the sport. That's insane. And if there are people out there who practice in their show clothes, like please tell me in the comments. Like I'm fascinated if that's really how you practice, because I could never. I like literally could never. I was like internally just like that was the second bad thing that Wildfire did in terms of representing real horses and real riders. All right, so the third one was there's a lot of injuries in this show and not a lot of rehab. Now, of course, rehab is the boring part of keeping your horses happy and healthy. And so I understand why they didn't show all the rehab that it takes. But that is something that I just wanted to point out here, is that if a horse is not fit and you ask them to do the work, they're running on adrenaline. And I promise you, because my horse did get injured this way, because he's one of those horses where he was all hepped up on Mountain Dew all the time. And so it was really hard, because when I would get him too fit, he was uncontrollable, because all of a sudden he had an adrenaline rush and he was strong. And so he became like impossible to even control. So I always had to balance how much fitness I gave him, because otherwise he was literally out of control, especially out on cross country. And there was not a big enough bit that would stop this horse. And so the fact, though, is that if your horse is not equally as fit as the task at hand, then you're basically signing your horse up to be injured. And so one of the criticisms, number 3, is that they didn't do a good enough job showing the fact that if a horse gets injured, like they're not going to be doing they're not going to be like running a race the next day. And so even if you didn't show rehab, which is like long, it takes like months and months and months, if not a year, and the whole process of getting them back to work, it wouldn't take like a lot. It could be like a very simple montage, but all it would do is just show that like you're never going to recover from like a tendon injury or a surgery like overnight. And you could do a very simple like scene cut just to show like the time and dedication it takes to actually get horses back up and running. And this is also why this whole entire channel exists, because when my horse was injured, he had a lateral suspensory, and I was told that he, was never going to come back. And basically through his rehab, I was introduced to the Equiband, 100% true story. So this channel was literally created because I started using the Equiband, and they were like, well, go online and figure out how to use it. So I was going online, and there was no information on the internet about using the Equiband and building that fitness program to get the horse back to work. And at the time, I was being told that he was barely going to be able to come back to the level that he was currently at. So I was having to figure this all out myself. I was already frustrated. Lo and behold, though, not only did he come back and reach that level, he actually got to 2 levels higher than he was before. So not only am I like a huge fan of the Equiband now, and there's tons and tons and tons of videos. I can link to the playlist if you want. Tons of videos on this channel about the Equiband, how to use the Equiband, how to build a program for the Equiband. Not only that, I am also a huge proponent of fitness when it comes to rehabbing horses, and that strength is the number 1 asset for your horse to not only heal from an injury, but actually get better after they recover from an injury, because my horse is a living, breathing proof that that is possible. That was something they did bad, was they didn't show the actual like rehab process to get horses back up and running, and it gives this false, idea that you can just they're good, they're bad one day and good the next. And that's not how that process works. There's a ton of videos on this channel, though, that help you navigate that process, and don't use the show Wildfire to do that. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. All right, so this next one that was so bad was when there's this horse and the jockey's on him and the horse is rearing. Now,
Easy boy. I don't get it. He was too
So this is a funny story because at the barn that my young horses are at, I have all these teenage girls come up to me and they want to ride my horse. And some of you may be watching this video right now. And so what I said to them was that if they could tell me, and funny enough, you're going to get the answer right now. I told them that if they could tell me why horses rear, then I would allow them to ride my young horses, because the fact of the matter is that it's dangerous to ride young horses if you don't know what you're doing, or misbehaving horses. Now, here is the answer to why horses rear. Horses rear because they feel there is no other answer. They feel there's no other option for them besides rearing. Now, this is the best advice, and it's dug into the back at the end of this video. I'm gonna have to clip this out. If you're disciplining a horse, do what you gotta do. 100%. You do what you got to do. If you feel like you're in danger, there's natural instincts in your body that are going to take over to be like, this is how we survive, this 2,000-pound animal giving me the middle finger right now. And so the answer to the question that I gave all these teenagers that nobody's given me the right answer yet, in order to ride young horses or misbehaving horses, you have to know how to discipline and allow at the same time. And when it comes to rearing, 9 times out of 10, because there are some malicious horses that just do it because they're mean and they don't care about their own safety, let alone anybody else's, a horse is going to rear because they feel like they're backed into a corner, like they have no other option. So if you're going to discipline a horse, I'm all for it. I've been training horses for a long time. If you just sit there and allow them to do whatever they want, you're going to get hurt anyway. So you may as well actually stand up for yourself. But if you don't stand up for yourself while simultaneously showing them what the right answer is and allowing them to make the right choice. Here's a better choice, and they have to take it themselves. You can't force horses into making better choices. So if you're unable to ride a horse that is being bad or that is young and doesn't know, you have to be able to learn how to discipline and allow at the same time. Otherwise, you are going to get hurt. So any of you teenagers that are at my barn and you watch this video, you're going to know the answer. So I can't wait to see which of you actually watched all the way to the end of this video. All right. And the last worst thing that Wildfire did as a TV show representing horse riding and having horses in general was there's a scene where Matt is conned and he is sold a horse that's not really the horse on the paper. And so the guy is basically running a con where he's selling other horses as if it's the horse that's actually valuable. Long story short, he sees him at the gas station and he pulls up beside him, and then he swaps the horses at this gas station. Now, I personally have had trailers break down. I've had trucks break down, all this stuff. No way in HE double hockey sticks is anyone pulling a horse out at a gas station on the side of the road. Like, you are signing yourself up for a huge problem, because the minute the horse gets out of the trailer, they are going to panic at new surroundings, not to mention all the stuff going on around them. And no matter if your horse is young, old, it's to them terrifying. My favorite part is in the scene, the one horse puts his head up, and that's the amount of fighting he gets. And I was watching it and I was just like, that would never, ever, ever happen. So that is not how horse stuff goes. That was the last worst thing that Wildfire did in terms of representing not only the equestrian world, but horses and riders in general. So we have 5 good and 5 bad, and the main part of the show is clearly more the drama than it is the horses. And so if you guys have any other ideas of any other shows you want to watch that aren't 17 seasons, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the 5 best and worst things that Wildfire did when it comes to talking about horses and training and riding and all that kind of stuff. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and actually hype the video, because that's a new thing with YouTube now, where if you hype the video, it gets shown to more people. And I would love you if you could do that if you did enjoy watching this video. So I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great rest of your day.